All right, let's dive into an idea that might feel a little backward at first. We're going to talk about how true authority, real respect, doesn't always come from speaking more. In fact, sometimes it comes from mastering the art of saying nothing at all.
So let me just ask you this. You ever been in a really important meeting or maybe a tense conversation and you just kept talking? Just filling the air, and then suddenly you realize, oh no, I've completely weakened my own point. It is a terrible feeling, right? It's a totally human thing to do. The second there's a pause in a conversation, our brain just starts screaming at us to fill that gap. Fill it with noise, with words, with anything to make the discomfort go away. And what happens when we rush in like that? We start to over-explain. We start justifying, adding all these little details that nobody asked for. We think we're making ourselves clearer, but usually it has the exact opposite effect. And this whole cycle, we can call that the noise trap. The more words we throw at a point to try and defend it, the less confident we actually sound. And just like that, our authority starts to crumble. We've literally talked our way out of a position of strength. So, what if there was a way to break free from that trap? Well, there is. And the solution, the antidote to all that noise, is something called strategic silence. It's all about learning to use the pause to your advantage. Now, this isn't just about being quiet for the sake of it. No way. Strategic silence is a deliberate tool. It's you making a conscious choice to pause, to let a moment hang in the air, because you want to shift the dynamic. It's a skill, not just an absence of sound. And it's so important we get this straight. We are not talking about that cringy, awkward silence that we all hate. The one that feels anxious and just screams, "I'm uncomfortable." No, strategic silence is the total opposite. It's poised, it's intentional, and it projects this incredible, unshakable confidence. So, why on earth is this so powerful? I mean, it's just nothing, right? Well, it all comes down to some really interesting psychology. Let's actually get into the mechanics of why silence gives you so much leverage. So, how does this actually work in our brains? Well, a few things are happening. First, it projects that confidence we just talked about. Second, it creates this powerful sense of anticipation. People wonder what you'll say next. It also, and this is key, shifts the focus away from you and puts it on the other person. And finally, it creates a vacuum that other people feel this intense need to fill, often leading them to tell you more than they planned to. I mean, really think about it for a second. When you can state your case and then just sit there completely comfortable in the silence that follows, you're sending a massive nonverbal signal. It says, I'm secure in what I just said, I don't need to convince you, and I'm not afraid of your response. That right there is what true confidence looks like. And what about that anticipation? A well-timed pause is like a verbal spotlight. Suddenly, everyone in the room leans in a little closer. Their attention is laser-focused on you. And because of that, whatever you say after that silence, it lands with 10 times the weight. Okay, so that's the why. The psychology makes sense. But how do we actually do this in the real world? Let's break down how to put this to work in a couple of very common, often very tricky situations. First up, let's talk about the classic salary negotiation. This is a moment where your nerves are probably buzzing, and that temptation to just talk and justify what you're asking for is huge. So here's the play. It's incredibly simple, but so effective. You calmly and very clearly state the salary you want. Based on my contributions and the market rate, I'm looking for X. And then you go completely silent. You don't explain it. You don't apologize for it. You just stop. And that quiet pressure forces them to be the next one to speak, putting the ball squarely in their court. Okay, let's take another one. Imagine you're in a really tough conversation, maybe with a coworker or even someone you care about. The emotions are high, and you really need to figure out what's actually going on. So instead of filling the space with all of your own thoughts and assumptions, you ask a simple, direct, open-ended question. Something like, how did that actually make you feel? Or what's your take on all this? And then you hold the silence. You give them the room to really think and put together a real answer. It is amazing what people will tell you when you just give them the space to do it. So as we start to wrap this up, I want you to start thinking about strategic silence as more than just a tactic for a negotiation. Think of it as a new superpower for how you communicate. It's a tool you can pull out in any situation to be more thoughtful, more respected, and ultimately more influential.
So, really, the most crucial point here is this. True authority isn't about talking the most or always getting the last word in. It's about making your words actually count. Your real power is often found in those thoughtful, intentional pauses, in what you choose not to say.
And that leaves us with one final thought. The next time you're in an important conversation, maybe even tomorrow, think about this. What moment of silence can you create? What will you choose not to say to make what you do say so much more powerful?